Looks like we're on. Welcome to our YouTube Live. A big welcome to all our Genesis Health Club members who are going to be joining us today. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat and my assistant will make sure that I get them so I can answer your questions. So happy to see you all. We're in the middle of spring and our weather here in California is just been hot and sunny and beautiful. So allergies are up. I don't know if you guys suffer from any allergies, but I do. And I like to make sure I'm taking enough of my Genesis Gold and I add a product with quercetin in it. If you're interested, I have a whole protocol in the DMAR allergy protocol to help, but it does make a big difference. Everything is blooming at the same time here. So I do have a few questions to start with that you sent me ahead of time. And of course, if you have any questions during the live stream, just please put them in the chat. It's really good to see you all. So I have a question about this is from a customer who said she started the Genesis Golden Sacred 7. She's newly menopausal. Her symptoms have increased a little bit and she's having trouble sleeping. It is not unusual when you first start balancing your hypothalamus and optimizing the function that you get a little bit of rebound in the symptoms. It takes a few weeks for those to calm down. Your hypothalamus needs to have a good communication with the hormones that are kind of declining. And as Genesis Gold starts increasing receptor site activity, you're going to see more of the hormones uptake by the hypothalamus. So it's going to respond a little bit better, but there is a little bit of a rebound. So you may have a little more hot flashes and a little trouble sleeping just in the beginning for the first week or two, and then it should get better. Now, some women are farther along than they think in the menopause in the sense that their hormones have declined pretty consistently. And so this one is asking if the GenPro would be helpful. And that is usually where I start with my patients, is actually give them GenPro, which is a transdermal progesterone, meaning they rub it on their skin. I usually recommend to rub it on your thighs, which is the best place for absorption for transdermal hormones. For women. For men, they rub it on their upper inner arms. For women, our thighs. And the reason for that, that brown fat is highly vascular, so you get really good absorption with the GenPro. And it deposits into the fat. I don't know too many ladies that don't have a little bit of fat on their inner thighs, which is where you want it to deposit. You want it to get into that fat, and then it is in your bloodstream over 24 hours to give you the progesterone that you need. Progesterone is that foundation hormone that you start losing in perimenopause, and then estrogen starts falling. So while your estrogen levels are lower newly in menopause, they're not as bottomed out as progesterone is. And being a master hormone, it allows your adrenal glands to produce more of its hormones, which can convert over to testosterone and estrogen as well. So taking GenPro is the beginning, in the beginning, really can help with the change. It can help you sleep deeper. It can help you help with some of the hot flashes, especially help with the moodiness and the irritability. And I usually recommend twice a day to begin with. If you're perimenopausal, you're going to follow your cycles if you're still cycling. If you're menopausal and you're not cycling anymore or really irregular, you just start at any time during the month and you take it morning and night according to what controls bleeding. It could be anywhere from 2 pumps twice a day to 4 pumps twice a day if you're still cycling. So I do have a whole sheet with the GenPro on the website on exactly how to take it according to where you are in the change. Since you're newly menopausal, I would definitely say take it 2 pumps twice a day, all through the month. I usually have my patients take a 72-hour break from bioidentical hormones to clear receptor sites, which is like your period, where you're not making any hormones for 3 days, and that really clears the receptor sites. So do that, and then start again on day 4. Like I said, it takes Genesis Golden Sacred 7 about 90 days to really start to optimize the hypothalamic functioning. So you're going to start to feel better within a few weeks, but it's not a band-aid. So it's not going to immediately make you feel better. It's about resetting your hypothalamus to optimize its functioning to help you to transition through the change. If you are perimenopausal or premenopausal, starting the Genesis Gold now will keep it so you're not so symptomatic when you go through menopause. So the earlier you can start, the better. I definitely found of course I took it because I created it, but I started at about 38, 39 years of age. I was not having periods. I had hypothalamic amenorrhea from being over exercising, an eating disorder. My body fat was too low, had to take bioidentical hormones to actually have periods, stopped all my bioidentical hormones and any supplements, and just started taking, at that time, it was just the Sacred Seven we could make in the beta. And I got my periods back within about 6, 7 weeks after I started taking Sacred Seven, and had regular periods for quite a long time. I didn't go through menopause until I was in my mid 50s, which was more like my mother or my sisters who did not support their hypothalamus went through menopause in their mid 40s. So I do know that by supporting your hypothalamus, and I've seen this in many patients, we're able to kind of delay and get back to what is genetically, naturally your menopause age. Today, most women are so stressed. We don't get enough sleep, or exposed to all of these screens, or maybe nutritionally deficited. We're exposed to toxins. All of that stress causes the hypothalamus to go into dysfunction earlier. And when that happens, you're going to go into menopause earlier. So we do see the age of menopause slipping back from 51 and a half to into the 40s. It's getting earlier and earlier. So the sooner you can start supporting your hypothalamus, the longer you're going to have your reproductive life and your natural hormone production. So that's really important. It also supports adrenal function. So that's really, really important, especially under all this stress. So one of the questions has to do with Genesis Gold being able to help improve sex drive. So sex drive is interesting because it is definitely hormonally related, but it's also neurochemically related. So your sex drive is driven for women mainly by estrogen. We think of testosterone as being the sex hormone, but it really is estrogen for women. Testosterone increases the libido a little bit, but not necessarily the arousability, okay? Women who have good estrogen levels that are, consistent, and they're having nice fluctuations in their reproductive years, they not only have great vaginal tone, juicy vaginas, they have sex dreams, they're very arousable, their skin is very sensitive, their nipples are sensitive, their erogenous zones are sensitive. That's all really important. That's estrogen. Testosterone doesn't do that for you. Testosterone will give you a drive, and we all have it when we're in our reproductive years, this testosterone drive. We get a surge right before we ovulate and right before we have our period when our estrogen levels fall. We don't make more testosterone then, it's just not as bound up. So with that extra testosterone, we get this burst of drive, which makes sense before ovulation so we can reproduce. I always found when I was competing in triathlons that my testosterone was higher anyhow because my hormones were so bottomed out. But that little bit of a drive, I was definitely more competitive then. So there's that drive, not just for libido, but for, assertiveness, aggressiveness. But it's estrogen that really, really drives and keeps our sex drive healthy. So making sure that your hypothalamus is balanced makes a big difference in how receptive your hypothalamus is and your brain is, or particularly hypothalamus, which controls your libido, to your sex hormones. So estrogen and also oxytocin. Oxytocin is a neurotransmitter. And what it does is it actually, we call it the cuddle hormone because it's what is produced in high levels when a mother is nursing her baby. Okay, so she bonds with that child, but it's also produced in high levels when we're socially interactive, especially when we're touching each other. A hug can actually increase your oxytocin. And when you're having sex, when you're making love, you're touching another person, your oxytocin level rises. So that it's very important that you have good, healthy oxytocin production, which starts to bottom out when you become menopausal. So when you're supporting your hypothalamus with Genesis Gold, you're going to have better oxytocin levels and more responsiveness. One of the things that I thought was really interesting is I had a couple, male and female couple, come in, and we were dealing with their hormones, etc. We got their hypothalamus balanced with Genesis Gold. And while they both were having some libido issues, the husband had a very interesting comment about his wife. And he said, since she's been taking her Genesis Gold, I've noticed that her skin is more responsive to me. And he said, I'm not talking about erogenous zones. I'm talking about like just touching her arm. She's just more sensitive, like she used to be when we first got married, 25 years ago. That is what I'm talking about, is that increased sensitivity of receptor sites and also that flux of oxytocin that allows you to be responsive to other human beings, especially your liver. So taking Genesis Gold will help to improve your libido, but it does take time. Some people, it takes like a good 6, 8, maybe even 12 weeks to really optimize hypothalamic function and get your libido up. Now, the other question related to that is, how will Genesis Gold help with weight loss during perimenopause? So when you go through perimenopause, and definitely into menopause and postmenopause, because your hormones are so imbalanced, you bottom out with progesterone, and then your estrogen levels start to fall in perimenopause, and then eventually in menopause, both of those hormones are falling, and by postmenopause, testosterone is also falling. So everything's dropping. We know that these hormones, particularly estrogen, increases your metabolism. It helps insulin and glucose get into cells and increase energy production. So when your hypothalamus is not getting the hormones it needs, it starts to slow down your cellular metabolism, so you don't produce more energy than you can use, or that you can get rid of the toxins, the waste products from that energy. So that's a natural hypothalamic dialing down of the metabolism. When you support your hypothalamus to function optimally with Genesis Gold, your metabolism will start to raise. At the cellular level, your thyroid function is better, so you're able to have a higher T3 production, and you're going to see an improvement in receptor site function. And those receptor site function, especially for the steroid hormones like the sex hormones, allow the hormones that you're making, even though they're declining, to be able to get into your cells, particularly your hypothalamus, to tell it that everything's okay. Don't bottom out my metabolism yet. Genesis Gold by itself is not going to make you lose weight. You have got to eat a healthy diet, and you have to move your body. Being sedentary, sitting for long periods of time, is like the new smoking. It's very dangerous for our health. It increases the risk of metabolic disease, including weight gain, hypertension, cardiovascular disease, diabetes. So you really want to move, not just 30 minutes of exercise every day, but get up, get out of your chair and walk around at least every hour. Do some jumping jacks, jump rope, do some dancing, move your body. You have to stay active. And we're much more sedentary than we used to be because of these computers. We sit down a lot. Many people have sedentary jobs that, percentage wise, compared to what we had maybe 40 years ago. So move, eat a healthy diet, optimize your hypothalamic function with Genesis Gold. You may need a little extra Sacred 7 if you've been overweight for a while to really get things going. And that should help you start to lose the weight as you're going through the change. Will you need hormones? You may. You may need hormones once you become menopausal. Every woman's different. I tend to prescribe different levels of hormone replacement therapy, not for all of my patients, but they all need something a little bit different. But I do know that when your hormones are in good balance, when your hypothalamus is functioning normally, when you're taking Genesis Gold, you need a lot less bioidentical hormone replacement therapy in menopause. Okay, so we do have another question here. This person's been taking Genesis Gold for 455 days. That might have been a typo. At first she felt a difference, but now she doesn't feel it anymore. She thinks it's helping overall, but experience a lot more fluctuation, so she's not sure. According to how dysfunctional your hypothalamus is how much of an effect you get in the beginning, but then you do kind of get used to it. So if you're basically healthy with a little bit of issues, you're going to feel improvement pretty quickly, and then you kind of get used to it. One of the ways that I can tell that my body still likes Genesis Gold is I do take a break once a year. So it's not unusual to, come off, take a break for a few days, up to 7 days, and just clear my system. And that allows me to be able to go back to it. My body definitely, I can tell I'm missing it because my moods are not as good. My brain's not functioning as well. I might start getting some hot flashes. So look at your overall symptoms. If you're under a lot more stress, you might want to bump it up a little bit, take like just a tiny bit more. That can actually help. And also make sure you're paying attention to, you know, what you're eating and how you're dealing with stress, and are you moving your body? Because it definitely is a 5 pillars really to get your hypothalamus healthy, and that is supporting it nutraceutically, making sure that you're eating well, making sure that you're active, making sure you're getting some decent sleep in the dark, and also your mindset. You know, how are you dealing with stress? How do you deal with life in general? Negative attitudes, grief, sadness, anger actually suppress your immune system. It's harder for your hypothalamus to function. So do what you can to smile, do what you can to find gratitude in life. Anything you can do to handle stress and have a more positive mood helps your immune system function normally and helps your hypothalamus. Definitely prioritizing your self-care is great. I have my assistant online with us, Gabby. Thank you very much for helping, Gabby. And she's just posting links in the YouTube live so that you can see that. If you need any additional help and resources, she's going to have those links in there. When is the best time to take a break? I take a break from my Genesis Gold usually after the Christmas holidays. I'll do a break from Genesis Gold, and I do a liver cleanse at the same time. My liver cleanse is dietary. I have it, Gabby can also put a link to the blog post we have on the liver cleanse. It's also in our hormone reboot training. So the liver cleanse basically is olive oil and lemon juice shots. You're eating lots of veggies and a little bit of fibrous like grains in the morning, but you're not having sugar. You're not having other types of fats. Only protein if you're really hypoglycemic, like in the afternoon. For 3 to 7 days, it really will clean your liver out. So I have all those recommendations in the exact diet in the hormone reboot training that you can take a look at with the full diet for you, so you can do that cleanse. It's really, really helpful to do the cleanse at the same time as taking off with Genesis, especially after the holidays. I may do it like after a vacation, like summer vacation, we're a little indulgent, eating more things that I don't normally eat. And take a break then. My body doesn't usually tolerate a full 7-day break, so it's usually 3 to 5 days. So I have another question on whether or not, how will you know if your hypothalamus isn't functioning normal? So there's quite a few signs and symptoms of hypothalamic dysfunction. Number one is the inability to maintain a normal, healthy circadian rhythm. Your hypothalamus controls your day and night cycles. So if you're not able to fall asleep easily, stay asleep, and wake up with the sun, if you're tired during the day, if you find yourself especially tired from 3 to 5 p.m., then you have some hypothalamic dysfunction. You're not able to have normal energy and you're not sleeping well. That is one of the symptoms. Another symptom is moodiness. So now it's normal to have reactions to it. It happens. But if you're exceptionally moody, okay, irritable, you can't focus, you can't concentrate, your hypothalamus actually controls your neurotransmitters, particularly dopamine, which is really that focus neurotransmitter. And if you're not making enough dopamine, you're not going to be able to focus. It also helps to control your serotonin to melatonin conversion as well, and back and forth day and night. So you're not going to be as calm. It controls your hormonal output, not just from your gonads, ovaries, and testes, but from your thyroid and your adrenal glands as well. So it does control your moods. Temperature control. Your hypothalamus is where you have your thermostat. So to keep your body at the perfect 98.2 degrees when you first wake up in the morning to 98.6 during the day, that's your hypothalamus regulating body temperature. We have a small window of what should be normal body temperature to actually regulate cellular metabolism and function. When that is dysregulated, it's because the hypothalamus isn't regulated properly. And when your estrogen level falls, that really dysregulates the temperature control in the hypothalamus. The other thing is if your hypothalamus sets your weight set point. So it is normal for all of us to gain a little weight and lose a little weight with stress. But if you can't seem to lose weight, even though you've been trying, you're eating less calories, you are exercising, it may be a hypothalamic dysfunction where your weight set point is kind of set at survival mode, which your hypothalamus feels is a much higher weight than is ideal for you, then that can be an issue. If you're undernourished and you develop hypothalamic amenorrhea, meaning you start not having periods at all, you're skipping your periods, that could be a sign your hypothalamus is dysfunctional. Infertility is often rooted in hypothalamic dysfunction, especially if it's hormonally derived. Now, of course, you have blocked fallopian tubes, blocked vas deferens, not enough sperm production. But if you're not ovulating and your tubes are patent, it may be hypothalamic dysfunction, a dysfunction between the hypothalamus, pituitary, and ovarian axis. If your bowels are out of order, if you have irritable bowel syndrome, your microflora is imbalanced, your hypothalamus actually directs your gut. It talks to your microflora in your gut, your biome. It keeps it healthy. It literally regulates it on a moment by moment, meal by meal, stressor by stressor basis. It can actually change the whole composition of your gut flora according to what you're eating and what you're undergoing stress-wise. So if your gut's out of balance, you're going to find that your hypothalamus is probably out of balance too, which is why I always start with supporting the hypothalamus when I'm seeing symptoms in patients. I mean, if they break their arm, that's not a hypothalamic dysfunction. If they get a strep throat and caught strep from somebody else, that's probably not a hypothalamic dysfunction. If they're chronically getting strep throat, chronically getting pharyngitis, then I got to consider the hypothalamus isn't functioning properly because it's not directing the immune system properly. If you have autoimmune diseases, that can also be hypothalamic dysfunction. There's a lot of symptoms of hypothalamus dysfunction, and I talk a lot about it in our hormone reboot training as well, and getting them more information there. Another question that we have on the live is, this person's been taking both the supplements since COVID. So since she's had COVID or since the pandemic, I'm not sure that. She's not always 100%, but definitely 5 out of 7 days, and she doesn't get any cold sores anymore. That's excellent. It means your immune system is functioning much better than it was. It has definitely changed her life. She started taking it, and now she's using GenPro since last winter. And she found herself easily emotional, easily frustrated 2 to 3 months in. And she's also somehow missed stopping for 3 to 4 days. Maybe this could be why. It's possible. So if you don't take a break for that 72-hour, 3-day period, you can get used to the hormone and it can no longer get into the receptor site. So it's kind of like you're starting all over again. So give yourself a break and probably since it's been since last winter, I'd probably say maybe a 5-day break just to completely clear your receptor sites and get restarted again. I don't know if you're cycling, that might be, make sure that you're following your menstrual cycles. If you're menopausal, then of course you're taking it all the way through the month with just that 3-day break, but that should actually help. Now, sometimes just adding progesterone if you're menopausal and not getting the estradiol that you might need can actually cause you to be a little bit moody. But I do find that most patients, when they take it with a break, it just stays fresh in their symptoms and they get that the initial response when they first start it continues all the way through, so they don't get used to it. So hopefully that will help. Let me see if I have another live question. No, but keep coming if you have them. So one of the questions I had from previously is, will Genesis Gold help hypothyroidism? Hypothyroidism means that you're not making enough thyroid hormone, T4 and T3. T4 is produced in the thyroid right here, little butterfly gland in your neck. It is converted over to T3, which is the active hormone. It's T3 that gets into the cells that turns on your mitochondria so that you produce more energy. Okay, so you need T3. Super important to all our metabolic processes, but you need T4 as that precursor. So the hypothalamus tells the pituitary gland to produce thyroid stimulating hormone, which then tells the thyroid to produce thyroid hormone. The hypothalamus responds in a negative feedback mechanism, which means that if your so if your T4 and T3 levels are low, your TSH rises because your hypothalamus is perceiving that you're not making enough for you. And so it tells your pituitary gland to make more TSH. If your your T4 and T3 are too high, your TSH drops. So it's this negative feedback seesaw, which is great. A lot of my patients come to me with hypothyroid symptoms they have constipation, they're cold all the time, they've gained some weight, they're tired. The kind of tired that you get with your thyroid is a little different than adrenal tired, and it's different than not getting enough sleep. When your thyroid is low, if you keep moving, you can usually get your stuff done. But as soon as you sit down, you feel like you're going to fall asleep. That is the typical hypothyroid fatigue. Okay. Super important that you understand that and report that to your providers. They need to look at not just TSH in your blood. They need to look at free T4 and free T3 levels as well and compare them, because we want to look for that miscommunication. TSH alone will not tell us that. If I have a patient who has low TSH, normal, but low normal, and low T4, T3, still in the normal levels, but on the low normal, that's a miscommunication between the hypothalamus, pituitary, and thyroid. And that is not atypical. I see that a lot, and that means there's hypothalamic dysfunction. So if you start supporting your hypothalamus with Genesis Gold, it not only helps your receptor sites for thyroid hormone and all your other hormones get into the cells, but it helps your hypothalamus be more responsive to the thyroid hormone you're making. So there's a more normal communication between the thyroid, the hypothalamus, the pituitary, and then the thyroid again. That constant access is working properly. So it also helps to improve not just thyroid hormone receptor site, but thyroid hormone production, because it's rich in seed vegetation, and seed vegetation is rich in iodine, and iodine is an absolutely necessary mineral for thyroxine production. Thyroid T4, I want you to imagine the thyroid T4 hormone as a little square. On the very ends of each of the squares, angles, is an iodine molecule. One of those iodine molecules gets knocked off, and that becomes a T3. If it's the wrong iodine molecule, it's a reverse T3. And so if you're just looking at total T3 in your blood and not free T3, you're measuring both reverse and free T3. You may have too much reverse T3 and it doesn't work. It can't get into the cells. I see that a lot in patients who are overweight and have hypothalamic dysfunction with hypothyroid symptoms, but it's not showing typically in their blood. Their TSH isn't super, super high, indicating typical clinical hypothyroidism. So we see a lot of subclinical hypothyroidism, and it needs to be addressed. And sometimes all you need is to start to activate, optimize normal, healthy hypothalamic function to get the thyroid going again. And then some of my patients are so low, they need a little bit of T4, T3 combination in order to actually feel better, feel more alive, and be able to start moving again. Okay. No other new questions. So there was a question on prolactin and irregular periods. So prolactin is a hormone that was discovered when breastfeeding moms were producing milk. It actually is very high for them, and it promoted lactation. That's how it got its name, prolactin. But we all make prolactin, whether you're breastfeeding a baby or not, whether you're a man or a woman, transgender, everybody makes prolactin. Prolactin is a super important hormone at night that helps to regulate your immune system. It actually helps your immune system by telling your thymus, which is a little gland above your heart, to actually train the B cells from the bone marrow to become trained T cells, thymus cells, to actually know the difference between you and others. So prolactin is super important in autoimmune conditions. Okay, if you don't have normal prolactin production at night, you're more likely to have autoimmunity. Now, which means your cells are attacking you instead of other. Now, what does prolactin have to do with irregular periods? Prolactin is only supposed to be produced at night. If you have higher levels during the day, that does not mean that it's higher than normal, but it's too high for the day. It has a circadian rhythm. You should be making the highest amount at night. So you have about an 8-hour window. About 3 hours after you produce melatonin, you start making prolactin. You make it for 8 hours. So usually about 8 to 9 a.m., your prolactin levels have fallen. And the only thing that turns prolactin off, so you're not making any more prolactin, which is a hypothalamic hormone, is dopamine. When the hypothalamus makes dopamine, it actually turns off the prolactin production. And then you wake up. Okay, you're alert. If you wake up and you're not very alert, you kind of feel like you're sleepwalking, you don't have any energy in the morning, you may have a high circadian prolactin, meaning it's too high in the morning, staying too high during the day. Could be because you went to bed too late, you didn't get enough sleep, and you're still making prolactin in that 8-hour window. It could be because your hypothalamus isn't producing enough dopamine to turn it off. So when your prolactin stays a little bit higher, prolactin's job in a pregnant woman, okay, so she's also producing a lot of prolactin to upregulate her immune system, to protect her and her fetus, and also start training her fetus's immune system with that high prolactin level. That high prolactin protects her from her own very high sex hormones that are actually high in order to help to grow this fetus and maintain the uterus and the placenta. Super important. But if she was not protected from that high estrogen progesterone levels, especially estrogen, she may grow some hormone mediated tumors that she doesn't want, like melanoma and breast cancer. So the high prolactin protects her, which is good. But if it's high during the day and you're not pregnant, you're not breastfeeding, it's actually blocking your estrogen and progesterone at the receptor sites. It's not getting in. So that's telling your hypothalamus that you're not making enough estrogen and progesterone. And that will block that hypothalamic pituitary ovarian axis, and your periods will become irregular. It's one of the most common things that we check for when a woman has infertility. We check her prolactin level. We check her thyroid and we check her prolactin level. And then we check her progesterone about 7 days before she expects a period, around day 21 on a 28-day cycle. Those are the three levels we need to look at in order to determine if there's a hormonal imbalance causing the infertility. So yes, prolactin can definitely, high prolactin levels and circadian prolactin levels, making it high during the daytime and not high enough at night, will affect your periods. Okay, there's another new question. So this person says that she got Sacred 7 for a friend who really likes taking it. It helps with her sleep and her cycle. But she does get herpes outbreaks a little too frequently, so she had to stop taking it. So some people with herpes simplex 2 or 1, either one, will be very sensitive to arginine. And while Sacred 7 has arginine in it, it's not a super high level of arginine, but it may just make her sensitive now. So what I would suggest for your friend is she go back to the Sacred 7 and take a little extra lysine, Lysine, to balance out the arginine that's in the Sacred 7 to help prevent herpes simplex outbreaks. Because herpes simplex is more likely to outbreak when your lysine levels are low, and then you get exposed to arginine either in an amino acid like this or even high intake of like red meat, high levels of arginine, that can actually instigate a herpes outbreak. So taking some lysine, maybe 250 to 500 milligrams, can help to prevent that until she can start to regulate her hypothalamus. If she goes on to the Genesis Gold instead of the Sacred 7, while there's Sacred 7 in it, it's not as concentrated with as much of the amino acids, and it may give her a better blend for sleep and not instigate the herpes simplex outbreaks. That's what I've seen in my patients. So if they get it with the Sacred 7, they need to take it with Genesis Gold, so it's a little bit more blended and not so much of the much arginine compared to all the other micronutrients that are in it. Okay, so this new question is asking about hypopituitarism. How do we with hypopituitarism get dopamine? So hypopituitarism means that your pituitary gland is not producing enough of its own hormones. It can be panhypopituitarism, which means none of its own hormones. It doesn't release prolactin. Now, prolactin is produced by the hypothalamus, but it's released by the pituitary. It doesn't produce enough TSH, ACTH, which controls the adrenal glands, FSH and LH, which controls gonad function and steroid production and reproduction. So if it's not producing enough of those hormones, that's pan. It could be just one aspect of hypopituitarism. Now, dopamine is actually produced by the hypothalamus, not by the pituitary gland. So a lot of times my patients with hypopituitarism, which is easy to diagnose because you can measure all those stimulating hormones that I just told you about, you can't really measure the hormones of the hypothalamus, so it often gets missed. If we treat hypopituitarism as a hypothalamic dysfunction and start supplementing with Genesis Gold and Sacred 7, you'll naturally get a higher dopamine level, and oftentimes hypopituitarism will start to correct itself. I had a patient years ago, before I even made Genesis Gold, before I even created it. So this was a long time ago. And she came to me with pan hypopituitarism. She didn't make any of her own stimulating hormones, which meant she made none of her own hormones. So she was on insulin. She had to take estrogen and progesterone to get periods. She had to take cortisol, and she had to take both T4 and T3. She couldn't sleep, so she was on sleep aids. She was on anti-anxiety and antidepressant medication. And she really had to work really hard to control her metabolism through exercise and diet. She was starving herself just to be able to keep her weight down. So she came to me wanting to get off all of these synthetic hormones and go on to bioidenticals or nutraceuticals, etc. Did not have Genesis Gold yet. Switched her over to bioidentical hormone replacement therapy. She was doing okay. And then we finally were able to manufacture Genesis Gold. And I said to her, why don't you try taking Genesis Gold to support your hypothalamus, and let's see what happens with your needs for hormones. Let's see if we can wake your pituitary gland up. It took 18 months of taking Genesis Gold regularly, but slowly over those 18 months, we were able to wean her off of all of her hormones. To the very end, she did not need estrogen and progesterone to have periods. She was no longer taking insulin. She didn't take sleep aids, no antidepressants, no anti-anxieties, no more cortisol, no more thyroid hormone. We got her off everything. She was making her own. She had her own TSH, ACTH, FSH, LH, was doing it all. I told her that she probably should consider using a barrier contraceptive because she was fertile. And she said, oh no, I've been infertile all my life. I said, you actually have periods now on your own. If you don't want to have a child, you need to use a barrier contraceptive, not a hormonal contraceptive. We weren't messing with that loop again. She did not use a barrier contraceptive and had a healthy baby boy at the age of 43. So if the woman with pan hypopituitarism can recover with hypothalamic support, I think it's worthwhile in most cases to really support your hypothalamus, try to get your pituitary functioning more normally again. So I have another question here. What diet would I recommend for hormonal recovery? Well, if you've been following my YouTube channel, you know that I'm a huge fan of the Mediterranean diet, not just because my last name is Maragopoulos, which is Greek, and I'm Italian American, but because the studies have shown that you have the least amount of chronic debilitating illnesses, diabetes, heart disease, cancers on the Mediterranean diet. It provides enough phytonutrients as a dietary plan to help the hypothalamus function normally, which will help with your hormones. So you're actually producing more of your own hormones. It's adequate in protein for your lean body mass. And the fats that are usually recommended in the Mediterranean diet are healthy monounsaturated fats, maybe some olive oil, but you can use avocado oil as well, nuts and seeds. Most of the proteins are coming from legumes, fish, a little bit of poultry, very little red meat. And it's pretty balanced. I mean, you can have a little red wine, you can have some coffee. They're in moderation. You can pretty much eat anything, but the base is very plant-based. I think that's the healthiest diet, easiest to follow, and research has shown that it definitely makes a difference. When you are well balanced, your hormones are going to be well balanced too. So, if we have any other questions, Gabby? Remember, besides diet, supporting your hypothalamus nutraceutically, which is what I recommend, whether you're eating a healthy Mediterranean diet or not, because it's really difficult. It's really difficult to get all the micronutrients that your body needs and your hypothalamus needs to actually stay optimally well. I think we're going to see more and more hypothalamic dysfunction, more diseases that we already know about that are actually related to hypothalamic dysfunction over time. I have certainly seen it. I don't know if you guys do any Google alerts, but I've been Google alerting the hypothalamus for like 10 years. That's me. It's just kind of weird, but I have been doing it. In the beginning, I got nothing back on the hypothalamus. And since the pandemic, I've got an incredible amount more research on the hypothalamus. I just got one today, actually looking at the connection between hypothalamic dysfunction and migraines. And I know that my patients who have used Genesis Gold to support their hypothalamus and who had migraines have way less migraines, if not going away completely. So we do know there is a connection there. And you're going to see the hypothalamus at the core of the majority of the diseases and illnesses, especially chronic illnesses, because it is the maestro of all of your hormones, your neurotransmitters, and your immune system. It's controlling it all. So thank you so much for joining me today. And we will definitely do this again. We'll figure out a schedule. Make sure we announce it in time so that you guys can hop in and ask me questions. And I'm really happy to do this with you. And, you know, check out the YouTube channel. If you have any other questions, throw them in the chat. Gabby will throw in some more references for you and links. Okay. So I want you to have a beautiful week. And remember, if you're not taking care of you, who is going to do it? Bye-bye, my friend.